All right, to unpack Africa's debt issuance trends of 2014 is Megan McDonald, Global Head of Debt Primary Markets at Standard Bank. Megan, thank you very much for joining us. Now, African economies have been growing at impressive rates, but there's a lot of debt that has been issued by both government and corporates. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you and good afternoon. Yes, we have seen a record year for issuance again this year in terms of Eurobond issuance from sub-Saharan Africa. So volumes are around about $14 billion, which equal to the $14 billion that was issued last year. However, when one looks at the total amount of debt issued by African economies and corporates and other types of issuers, it still only accounts for less than 5% of the total fixed income or Eurobond issuance out of the emerging market sector. So Africa still accounts for a very low proportion or percentage of total Eurobond debt that's being issued into international capital markets.
Is issuing bonds a good way to raise funds in Africa?
Absolutely. I think issuing a bond brings a number of benefits for an issuer. It obviously allows an issuer to tap into a new investor base of international investors located in the US, Europe, and Asia. I think what an international bond issuance also does for an issuer, like a sovereign, for example, is it promotes a lot of fiscal discipline. It promotes good standards from a disclosure and a governance perspective, in the sense that an issuer has to report and provide information to investors on certain things such as its economy, its economic policies, its political system, when one looks at issuance from a sovereign. And from a corporate perspective, it obviously promotes good financial reporting, good internal governance, in terms of providing an issuer with all the information that an investor would want to know to get comfortable that obviously the bond will be repaid on time.
Right. And what are these bonds used for? Is it mainly sort of your infrastructure projects?
Yes, that's certainly the trend that we've seen. So we all know about the large infrastructure requirements that Africa has. And a lot of the sovereigns that you've seen issuing Eurobonds of late, the majority of that funding is going into building and improving infrastructure for Africa. So we're seeing that money being deployed into roads, into rail, into ports, into electricity generation, all the types of infrastructure requirements that Africa really desperately needs to develop. So the money is definitely being put to use predominantly in the infrastructure sector in Africa.
Maybe if I can ask you to sort of gauge, in terms of 2015 and what it's looking like for African debt issuance.
We certainly see the trend of growing issuance to continue in 2015. There are potential headwinds in the form of the US Fed, and it's a question of when and not if US rates are going to rise, and we expect that would have a temporary volatility, or would introduce temporary volatility into the international capital markets. But given that Africa still represents such a tiny percentage of total emerging market bond issuance, we see that there will be continued appetite from international investors for Eurobond issuance from Africa, and we particularly expect to see a lot more corporates and financial institutions accessing the Eurobond market, leading away from the traditional dominance of the sovereign sector in terms of Eurobond issuance from sub-Saharan Africa.
All right, Megan, thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate that. Megan McDonald, Global Head of Debt Primary Markets at Standard Bank, speaking to us from Cape Town.